What's going on? It's Nick here, back with another fantasy football video. It's Friday, so you know what time it is. Time for another top 5 video. If you're new to the channel, we do a top 5 video every single Friday, along with mock draft Mondays, and then different series to kind of fill out the rest of the week. So be sure to subscribe if you have not done so already. One note before we begin, if you didn't see the last video, we're starting up a new series where we'll be looking over your mock drafts. So if you want to send those in, check out the last video for how to do that. But basically there'll be a link in the description box, or I guess just an email, where you can email those in. Make sure to include the whole draft board, so we kind of need you using SleeperBot or Fantasy Football Calculator, which are the best two anyways. So use one of those two, and then you got to tell us if it's PPR standard, if it's not listed at the top, and then we'll be able to figure out 10 team or 12 team. But keep it normal roster settings. If you want to do like some different ones, we're fine with that. If you want to do maybe like a 2-quarterback league, whatever, go crazy. We'll include some different ones. So be sure to check out the description for that and check out the last video. On to the top 5 video, and a few things to clarify. This is not a bust video. Those are coming. I'm not predicting any of these guys to straight up bust. But every player, they have a value. And sometimes people get hyped up a little bit too much, and they're going a little bit too high in drafts, and the draft capital is just too much. We don't want to spend that high of a pick on what we're actually going to be getting. So this is a list of 5 players I think are going too early in drafts. I tried to pick all the different positions. You know, I didn't want to just pick like running backs and wide receivers. I wanted to pick everything. So we've got quarterback, I think 2 running backs, wide receiver and tight end, and I tried to go at different points in the draft. So I picked someone really early to mid to late, stuff like that. So I tried to represent the entire draft in one video. Tough to do. I had to get some players that are controversial, I guess, but that's what this is about as well. We want to start a discussion. So I'm just posing some questions to some players that maybe people have too cherry of an outlook on, that we need to discuss their downfall. Downfall? Downside. We won't do downfall. Alright. Starting off with quarterback, Jared Goff. Currently quarterback 10. He's going about the end of the 7th round. Kind of depends on your draft. Could go end of the 7th, early 8th, anywhere in that range. He's my quarterback 17, so significantly below that ranking. Here's a list. I'll just give you a quick list of players that I would draft ahead of him, even if it was the same spot. So if we're like sitting in like the 12th round and Goff's available, and I would draft all of these players ahead of him at the same spot. Stafford, Winston, Mahomes, Mariota, Luck, Big Ben, and Bortles, obviously including that Luck if he's like alive. If I'm drafting Blake Bortles over you, then we have a problem. Like that's an issue. Not to mention the fact that you should rarely ever draft a quarterback before the 9th round unless it's a 2-quarterback league. Remember, in those you should probably lock up like probably like a top 7 or 8 option, and then get someone else in like the top 15. You shouldn't be waiting until getting to like 17 and 18s. That's not the best. But if you are going to draft a quarterback ahead of the 9th, there are some guys you could do it for, but they have to be mobile. They have to have legs. And I'll link an article in the description box about a good article that I read probably like a year ago about the value of rushing quarterbacks, and the importance of having the rushing upside with your quarterback. And then also link my article on the value of quarterbacks and the expected value as you move through the draft. But in general, the value of a replacement's pretty minimal unless the guy posts a monster season, and I just don't see Goff posting that season. Received the 16th highest pass grade by PFF last year. He had the 29th highest run grade, and he's just bad. He can't run the ball. 28 carries for 51 yards. You're not getting it each week. You're not getting any sort of upside on the ground. Bryce Petty, in his 3 starts, had more rushing yards than Goff did. And that's just not going to cut it. I mean, unless you're Tom Brady or Drew Brees, you need some sort of rushing floor. He had a great year last year. A great year. He's probably going to see some regression. Finishes quarterback 12. And we're going to draft him at quarterback 10? No, we're not going to do that. He would need to take just massive steps forward and get lucky to finish inside the top 7. So I don't think he's a good pick at all. Being drafted anywhere in the 7th and 8th round, that's just, can't do that. I, like you guys have heard me say before, just to give you someone else to target, it's Winston, Mahomes, and Mariota, or just stream late, but all those guys will be available late in your drafts. I think you should target them instead. And then if you play DFS, I just kind of wanted to highlight this as well. if you play DFS, you know that the best way to construct your cash game, and I'm talking cash games, not tournaments. If you're constructing a cash game, you kind of want like 130 points. That's typically, you'll be right above the cash line. And you almost always pay down at quarterback, and then at tight end, you also pay down. So you pay down at tight end and at quarterback, and you spend up at the skill position players, so the wide receivers and the running backs. If that's how you construct it in DFS, why are we not constructing it that way in season long? It makes no sense. So just look at the articles I posted. Remember that Goff has absolutely no rushing upside, and there's just no reason whatsoever that he should be drafted in the 7th and 8th round. All right, let's move on to the next position. We've got wide receivers, and for wide receiver, we're going to talk about Devonta Adams. He's currently going as wide receiver 6, 17th overall. So it's middle of the second round, right at middle of the second round, and he's currently our wide receiver 8 or 9. We're not 100% done our wide receiver rankings, but it looks like that's the range he's going to fall in. 27th in air yards last season with 1,153. If you don't know air yards, that's just like the total number of yards the ball traveling in the air towards that wide receiver. So it counts only obviously targets towards them, but it counts the ones that weren't caught. So you have yards and then the incomplete yards towards that player. Add those together, it's air yards. It's much more predictive, air yards is, year over year, especially week over week. If someone's getting a ton of air yards but they're not really producing, that's usually someone you want to buy low on, and vice versa. If they're getting barely any air yards but catching all of them, maybe someone you sell high on. But he's not a deep threat. You know, he had 27 air yards. That was behind Paul Richardson, Mike Wallace, Robbie Anderson, and Kenny Stills. His claim to fame is touchdowns, which I'll get to in a second. But another stat I wanted to throw out there was RACR, and that's basically how well does a player convert a yard thrown at him into receiving yards. So when I throw the ball at you, how well are you converting those into receiving yards? He was 27th in that as well. It's twice as predictive as yards after the catch, and 27th for both of these isn't awful, but this is wide receiver 6. Like, this is the middle of the second round that you need to hit on, and he's not that efficient. And to be honest, he's let us down before. Do we remember the other time we were taking him super early because everyone was gone on the team, and we were like, oh, Jordy's gone, and now we have the one on the Packers, and then he busted. So he is not some monster wide receiver that we're targeting here. His claim to fame, like I just said, is touchdowns. However, as you heard me say a million times on the channel, touchdowns are not predictive year to year. Look at Mike Evans if you want to see that. Dude goes from 12 to 3 to 12. I'm not going to say completely random because it's a product of what packages they use when they're close to the end zone, and it's a product of your physical stature. Someone like Tavon Austin just isn't going to get a ton of touchdowns, but it's not predictive year over year. What's predictive is volume, and Scott Barrett wrote a fantastic article. I will be linking it in the description below about touchdown receptions and potential regression candidates. So he highlighted the following stat, and I don't want to go over everything in this article because I genuinely think all of you should read it. This is the stat he highlighted. Over the past decade, there have been 129 instances of a flex-eligible player recording more than 10 touchdowns in a season, and that they also played at least one game in the following year. So we've got 129 players, 10 or more touchdowns, more than 10 touchdowns, excuse me, in a season, and they didn't pull a Kelvin Benjamin. They played at least a game in the following season. Only 8.5% of those saw an increase in touchdowns, and on average, they lost 5.5 touchdowns each. 5.5 touchdowns. That's a massive, massive amount. Because it's extremely important to find players that overperformed expectations because they're most likely to regress. So we're looking for guys who scored a bunch of touchdowns that probably shouldn't have, because those are the guys that are more likely to be losing this 5.5 touchdowns. So what Scott Barrett did is he broke down targets, and he said, okay, red zone targets doesn't tell you much. And this can be applied for so many more things than just football. Looking at tendencies for states, you know, breaking the country down into states doesn't make a lot of sense for certain things when it's county by county. It's the same exact thing for football. breaking a target down into red zone. Well, that's 20% of the field. Like, there is so much more that goes into a target and its chance of going for a touchdown than just red zone targets. So he broke it down yard by yard, saying, hey, a target from the 3-yard line is worth a lot more than a target from the 18-yard line. So again, it's in the description box. Great article. What did he find? At the end of the day, Davante Adams was expected to score 5.5 touchdowns, and he scored 10. He was the second biggest positive differential behind someone that we will get to later in this video, but he's the regression candidate. There's no doubt about that. Not only that, but they added Jimmy Graham, and Jimmy Graham was underutilized as a Seahawk, but still saw a jaw-dropping 14 targets inside the 5-yard line last season. They used Jimmy Graham when they got close. The Saints used Jimmy Graham when they got close. What do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to do when he gets close? He's going to use Jimmy Graham. So that's going to take some touchdowns away. Adams has never been over 75 receptions or 1,000 yards in his career. Jordy's gone, but Jordy averaged 32 receiving yards last season. Jimmy Graham is more than going to make up for that. So Jimmy Graham's going to take that and then take some. I think Aaron Jones can get more involved in the run game, so maybe they run a few more touchdowns in if he's going well. A full season of Aaron Rodgers could negate this. I am not going to deny that. A full season of Aaron Rodgers could make Adams overtake his touchdown regression and then add to it. That could happen. But I'm not saying what will happen. In all likelihood, he will not pay off this price tag, given regression and given who's coming in. Could he pay it off? Certainly. But will he? I would say it's unlikely. So he's going to be the next guy. Carlos Hyde, moving into some of the middle rounds, running back 28 right now in PPR leagues. That's like the early 6th round. So somewhere in the 6th round, usually where he's going. I've seen him creep into 5th round. He's my running back 43. I think that's the biggest differential we have in this video. So he's running back 28 on average, but I have him at 43 at the moment. That could wiggle a little bit, obviously, but right now it's running back 43. And I genuinely, this is probably the biggest player that I don't understand why he's being taken so highly. I already talked about him in the Browns video, so if you want a more in-depth, go look at that. But it's an issue of ceiling. Duke Johnson is guaranteed to be the 3rd down back. That's a guarantee. Okay? And you say, well, okay, it's not a guarantee. What if he gets hurt? Duke Johnson gets hurt. Nick Chubb's the 3rd down back. I know Nick Chubb's not that great in the receiving game, but Hyde was graded as the single worst receiving running back in the entire league last season by PFF. He was ranked 150th out of 150. Including all running backs, even ones that had like 1 snap. 150th out of 150. Okay? The second worst had a negative 6.6 rating. Hyde had a negative 10.5. Hyde was awful and is awful in the receiving game. This stat is going to bring us to a new game we're going to play on this channel every single day. It's going to be called the Stat of the Day. This is something we're introducing this season. We're hoping to do it in every video, but it's possible I forget in like the mock drafts and stuff because those are live. So what are we gonna do? Every video, we're gonna bring up a stat and about something that relates to someone we're talking about. So this time it's the number 2 guy. So Carlos Hyde was the worst pass catching back in the league. This stat is who can tell me who the second worst receiving back was in the league. So I said Hyde had a negative 10.5 rating. Who had the negative 6.6? Who was the second worst receiving back in the league last season, counting all running backs? There's no filter like there was last time. No filter. Anyone who had a running back snap that is an actual running back, who had the worst? First person to correctly guess it in the comment section gets a shout out in the next video when we do the next stat. And you only get 1 guess, so don't just be writing out a bunch of guesses. It's going to work on honor code, so I don't want you guys looking it up and everything. Like, that's just lame, okay? It's just for fun. Just throw down who you think it is. If you want to throw down a why, if you want to throw down your thoughts on that player, do so. But it's whoever gets it right first gets a shout out in the next video. So who was the second worst receiving back in the league last season? Back to Hyde. Like I said in the start, it's a ceiling issue. He's not going to be a third down back. He's not going to get receptions. He's on the Browns, so he's not going to get a bunch of touchdowns. And he's not even as good as Nick Chubb is. So he's the worst of two running backs who are splitting early down work. No. I'm not spending my 5th or 6th round pick on that. Are you crazy? So, absolute no for me. There's no chance Carlos Hyde's on any of my teams. Moving on to tight end. I guess kind of the same range right now. Evan Engram, tight end 6, middle of the 5th round. He is my tight end 6. And you're saying to yourself, well, that makes no sense. Overvalued, and he's the exact same spot. Yep, he is overvalued for where he's going in the draft. He can be the 6th ranked tight end, but that does not mean you take him in the 5th round where he's going. And probably, to be completely honest, that's probably going to go higher because some of these rankings are factoring in Hunter Henry, at least a little bit. And when people start realizing there's less tight ends, guarantee you Ingram's gonna go up board. It's not gonna be a ton, but I wouldn't be surprised if in some leagues he goes in the 4th round, which is just nuts. It's not that he's like a bad football player by any means, because he's amazing. I mean, go to playerprofiler.com, check out his metrics. The dude's a stud. But everything went perfect for him last season. They lost all of their wide receivers and had a bad run game. So he turned into the focal point of the offense. And what did he do with that? 722 yards, 6 touchdowns, and tight end 5. He was 2nd in the league in drops behind Dez Bryant. He had 11 drops. That's a lot. He was 40th among tight ends with just 4.7 yards after the catch per possession. He was the 2nd worst tight end. I'll start that over. He had the 2nd worst tight end rating among tight ends that played at least 25% of the snaps. 2nd worst. Without Odell, Sterling Shepard, and Barkley. And I guess Marshall, but he's gone again this year too. Or he's gone this year. With those guys taking targets and yardage and touchdowns, is he really going to improve on these numbers at all? So I don't think he's a good pick. I think that all these touchdowns are going to Odell, they're going to Shepard, and they're going to try and feed Barkley early because remember, front offices love to be right. So they're going to give him stats and they're going to be like, look, our high pick paid off. Like the ranking, but it's just too high. If you're looking for who else you should be targeting, we've said a million times that Rudolph is a guy we're really targeting. We like Delaney Walker, we like Charles Clay, and we like Vance McDonald. You probably can wait till basically the end to draft Clay and McDonald. You'll have to take Rudolph and Walker in the middle rounds. I like all of them. Moving on to who I believe, yes, the last player on this ranking and probably the most controversial. I think Devonta Adams is kind of controversial, but I know we're gonna get a lot of comments on this one, so I'm prepared for that. Is one Alvin Kamara. Now he's going as running back 5, 6th overall, and he's my running back 6, 11th overall. So that's not a huge difference. Again, like I said, I also was trying to find someone in the 1st round, and you're typically not going to find someone in the 1st round that's like 3 rounds off on their ADP. I wanted to represent the whole draft here. This is more of a caution than predicting a bust. I've seen a lot of comments and I've got a lot of messages about people who want to take him 1st overall, 2nd overall, who are claiming that he's the best pick in the draft. You need to ease up a little bit on that hype. If you take him at like 8 or 9 or like 7, that's fine. He's going to have the reception floor, and he's playing with Drew Brees. I mean, he could absolutely repeat his touchdown performance. But do not, under any circumstance, take him ahead of Bell, Gurley, or DJ. I don't get... We all know that Bell's the #1 pick, okay? We all know that. And Gurley is just the focal point of that offense, who's also going to have a lot of receptions and also going to get all the goal lines. So the touchdown totals for Gurley should be way, way higher than Kamara if we play this season out over and over and over again. But everyone seems to be off David Johnson, and I just want to highlight him a little bit here. I know this is the overvalued episode, and I'll get back to Kamara in a second. But we need to remember that David Johnson is a 26-year-old running back with under 600 career touches, including the playoffs. People were talking about him as a league winner for the next 4 to 5 years, and then he suffers a freak wrist injury, and he's declared healthy in January. Was probably healthy before that, but they were losing. They were never going to make the playoffs, so why bring him back? And suddenly no one wants to draft him. He's perfectly healthy, guys. And we don't predict injuries here. The only technical reason why Bell and DJ would be a higher injury risk is because they're going to touch the ball 1,000,000 times. But that's good. We would like our players to have 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns, which is what David Johnson almost did. He was so close to 20 touchdowns, 1,000 rushing, and 1,000 receiving. And we're just going to throw him away for a guy who's going to get so many less touches. That makes no sense. Even looking at last season, obviously it's the one-game sample. He got hurt about to score a touchdown when he already had 6 receptions for 67 yards. So the dude's going to be around 1,000 receiving yards as a running back. And he's got the highest touchdown expectancy of any running back in the league. Maybe Zeke. Zeke might have a higher touchdown expectancy. But I just don't draft Kamara ahead of Bell, Gurley, DJ. Don't draft him ahead of Zeke. I know the reception difference is there, but Zeke's going to be around 1,500 yards. He's going to be around that like 13 to 15 touchdown range, and that's just so much different than Kamara. And we all know they could use Zeke in the receiving game. Who else are they going to throw to? I know they brought in Tavon Austin, but I mean, let's be honest, they have no one to throw to, so they might have to use Zeke in the receiving game. And this is touchdowns. Remember who I said the Scott Barrett article about regression candidates for touchdowns, touchdown regression? Kamara was one. He had 13 touchdowns. He was expected to score 5.4. That's a plus 7.6 differential, which is the 3rd largest over the past decade. The first two, the beat him out, combined to lose 21 touchdowns in the next season. If Kamara scored 5 touchdowns like he was supposed to last year, he would be going in like the 2nd or 3rd round. But he got lucky. He got lucky with touchdowns. I know he's a great talent, but he got lucky with touchdowns. I personally have Barkley ranked ahead of him. I'm fine if you take Kamara ahead of Barkley. I just prefer Barkley because we know the receptions will be there for him as well. We know that he's a better running back. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. He's a better running back. The rushing totals are safer. The touchdown totals are safer. And it's when these points are coming for you. Kamara might have better end-of-season numbers than the value that he actually provides you. Engram's going to miss the first 4 weeks, so Kamara's going to start out the year really hot. But if you actually pay attention in your leagues, then, I mean, how hard is making the playoffs really? I mean, like, genuinely, if you pay attention, you should have a decent shot at the playoffs. Like, a pretty decent shot. You don't need those first 4 extra bonus points from Kamara in the first 4 weeks to make the playoffs. You don't need that. So, his extra production is coming in the most meaningless weeks. If I want those extra production, I want him in the playoffs. If you do look ahead, and I don't put really any stock into this, the Saints have the 3rd hardest Week 15 matchup, and they're slightly below average in the Week 16 matchup. But again, I don't put too much stock in that. But it's when it's coming. He's going to get this extra production, but it's coming in weeks 1 through 4. Who really care? Just go, even if you go 1-3 in those weeks, you're still fine. Like, you can make the playoffs. You make smart waiver moves. So I don't like the pick. I don't think that you should draft him. Definitely not 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. If you want to go like 8th or 9th, that's fine. But he's unlikely to be there. I can guarantee you, in some of your hometown leagues, Kamara will be going 1, 2, 3. So just don't be the person who does that. So that is the end of this video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, how about we hit that like button? How about we subscribe if you are new? Thanks for watching.